Welcome to Ladies Talk Show. This is your host, Leah Richheimer. We are talking about communication. Like, hello, we learn reading, we learn writing, we learn arithmetic. Why isn't communication like one of the four pillars of that would make much of a better difference than adding 2 + 2 = 4? Well, maybe, I don't know. But the problem is we need to learn communication. So that's what we're here for. You guys are doing great. I'm getting great responses from and great questions that you guys are coming up with. It's brilliant. So we're on chapter 9 of Marriage Secrets, page 223. And I'm going to read you a couple of pages and then we're going to bring your questions in. So let's get thinking of some questions. Okay. Listening tips and techniques. Okay. Here are some basic guidelines that will help you to become a better listener to your husband. As we know, that's the key to secrets, key to closeness. The most important thing to remember is that you were born with innate talent in this area. The rest is just practice. There are 5 basic listening tools here to give you lots of ideas. Ideas of what to say, ideas of what to do, ideas of what to think, ideas of for introspection, and ideas of planning ahead. Some ideas will work for some people and some won't. And some might work one day and not another. There are plenty to choose from, so you can have many different options to road test on your journey towards gaining mastery over the ability to listen well. Circle or write down the ones that seem to resonate with you or feel like they have the most potential for you, and then use trial and error to hone in on your basic listening plan. Don't throw out an idea if it doesn't work the first time. It may work in the future, as it takes time to tweak your communication style and to learn what works with your husband. Okay? With your husband. Hopefully you only have one. Okay. Ideas of what to say. Number 1, ask a question. The single most important listening tool is, when in doubt about what to say to your husband, always ask a question. That is your foolproof method of forcing yourself to listen rather than to talk. It will bring your husband closer to you. Number 2, confirmation. Try to learn precisely what your husband needs to hear to feel assured that you have heard him. Does saying, "I got it," work? Does repeating it back to him work? Does offering solutions to his issues help? We all fear that when we say something, it went in one ear and out the other. Assuring him this is not the case will mean that all of your listening efforts will be doubly effective. Be the grand receiver of what he is sharing with you. Number 3, validation. Give credence to what he is saying by stating, "I hear and understand what you are saying," or "that must have made you feel frustrated or sad or upset." Number 4, repeat back what your husband says to assure him that he's been heard. For example, in a very pleasing tone of voice, you might say, "So what you're saying is that it upsets you when you come home and there are toys all over the front hallway." This acknowledgement that he's been heard will be received like the gift that it is. Number 5, learn to bite your tongue. When you get this urge to jump in with your own thoughts, or you want to finish his sentence since you're convinced you know exactly what he's going to say, practice keeping silent. Thus, you will not only get the pleasure of receiving gracefully, but your patience and kindness will be felt deeply. Ideas of what to do. Number 1, listen with full attention. So often we spend the entire time planning what we're going to say next, rather than truly listening to what our husband is saying. Take the project of listening to him very seriously, both because he's your best friend and also because how can we expect him to listen to us carefully if we do not do the same? Number 2, turn your cell phone off. Yes, even if he doesn't do the same for you, believe me, it'll be worth your while over the long haul in terms of closeness to make this one-sided sacrifice. Number 3, don't interrupt. Am I covering myself? Okay. Don't interrupt. Strive like mad, never to interrupt him. There's nothing that says, "I don't care what you are saying," than cutting him off mid-sentence. Many of my students have this bad habit, but once they recognize it and make a commitment to themselves to stop doing it, they see a huge shift in the closeness they feel to their husband. Then they become extremely motivated to continue this act of kindness because it is so self-serving. Also, when you're having a conversation with your husband, teach your children not to interrupt also. This is a level of respect that will help them to go very far in life and will speak volumes to your husband about how valuable his thoughts are to you. Eye contact. Make full eye contact if you can, and have open body posture to show interest, which means facing him squarely with no crossed arms. These subtle acts show the desire to connect and be close. On the other hand, if the topic is particularly stressful, going for a walk while talking so that you aren't staring at each other may make the conversation flow a little bit easier. It takes trial and error to see what works in which type of situation. And lastly, number 5, remember, if your husband gets a call in the middle of speaking, remember exactly what he was saying so that when he gets off the phone, you can remind him of it so he can continue. This gesture will make him feel like a king. Okay, ladies, what you got for me? We got some really good, these are tips and techniques for how to be close to your husband by listening and mastering your listening skills. Okay, what you got for me, Gila?
Okay, a lot of great questions coming in. Nomi asks, my husband and I are in toddler baby stage. Our children are very young, and so often they are crying, fetching loudly, and interrupting my husband while he's speaking. Any practical tips during the stage?
Excellent question. Okay, may continue to 120 that you have a lot of interruption, a lot of love and happiness and joy in your house so that this becomes an issue. So basically, there are times when there are sort of listening times, like when you're totally focused on your husband and like you're on a walk together and just you and him. You know, a lot of times women will take that beautiful opportunity and spend the whole time telling him every little subtle nuance of everything that happened in their whole life without asking him one single question about what's going on in his life. So when you have like coveted time, a private time, just the two of you, just make sure that's evenly distributed. And now, perhaps for the last 15 years, I found this so often, you've been monopolizing everything. So now really to spend more of the time listening to him. But in the times when the kids that you get these constant interruptions, that's really not the best time. If your husband is sort of insisting on talking, and he's like, oh, and you wouldn't believe what happened, and then this one's interrupting, that's when you can say to him, you're way more important to me than any of these interruptions. And again, you're handing the problem in, putting it in his lap. What do you suggest that I do in order to, when this happens? Because I feel bad telling the kid, no, I can't tie your shoe. No, I can't tie you. And they're waiting to go out with their friends or whatever because I'm listening to you. Or saying, hold on, dear, 10 times. Do you have any solutions? And he says, like what? Like, I don't know, like maybe you make an index card and write down, or on your phone, you send me a text. Don't forget to ask me about this. Don't forget to ask me about that. Something like that. And then we have a different time that we talk, and just brainstorm it. So the main answer to that question is that you have you compartmentalize it with the deep understanding and communication to your husband that your listening to him is a priority in your life, even though it doesn't look like it. It may not look like it at times, but that is really the biggest priority. Great question. Okay, what else you got?
Okay, so Talia asks, my husband can talk forever. I don't want to cut him off, but at a point, I just start to tune him out. How can we communicate effectively and quickly?
The good question. So you should just know all of the listening that you've been listening to him from now since forever is one of the key sources of your closeness to your husband. And when a woman sort of understands that and realizes that listening is so powerful in the connection and the closeness, and that even if she's done it in the past begrudgingly and frustratingly or whatever, she can pat herself on the back and say that is a great deal of the closeness that you have in your relationship. Now, moving forward, I would continue listening as much as you possibly can. When you start to zone out, it's not fair to you, not fair to him. So you could say something to him like, listen, I love listening to you and it's so valuable to me and everything you say is important. And you give it over in such an interesting way. But sometimes I feel like I don't get a chance to, like I go to bed and I'm like, oh, I forgot to tell him this. I forgot to tell him that. I forgot to tell him this, and so I feel like I don't have enough chance to share with you what's going on with me. How do you think we can solve this? You can hand the problem to him, or you can say, I was thinking that maybe, for the first 5 minutes, we can even set a timer for the first 5 minutes. I'm going to share a bunch of stuff with you and handle it that way. But you have to understand, this is a much more rare problem than the problem of a woman just, right? Women have 9/10 of speech, and if they use it all on their husband, they'll kill the poor guy, So, the problem is usually that the wife isn't asking any questions, isn't really listening to him fully. When he tells her stuff, he's talking about the carburetor in his car and how he had to, I don't know, what is a carburetor actually? Yeah, but he's talking about it. He's going into minute detail, and she's like, hello, whatever. So I totally get that. But the issue is, it's usually the problem the other way around. I've given you a little bit of a taste of how you can start thinking about solving it if your husband is a talkaholic or whatever, but usually it's the woman who is. Okay, good questions. Good.
Okay, Hadassah asks, my husband is so introverted. He prefers to zone out or have time alone. How can I encourage him to share more with me if he doesn't want to?
It's a good question. It's like any avoda. If you try and get a kid to clean their room, and you try, you wouldn't just keep for 10 years saying clean up, whatever you think. Well, that doesn't really work. Well, what does work? You try. Hey, you want that new baseball mitt? Okay, fine. If you clean up your room, you get 10 stars. Then you'll get the baseball bat. You sort of brainstorm. You think of, how am I going to solve this? Same thing here. Your husband is introverted. He likes his own space. Baruch Hashem, you give him, that's who God gave you. But if you want to listen more so that you can establish more of a connection, think about, what can I do? So let's see. Let me get a journal and let me write all the questions I have for my husband that I could possibly think of. Let's see. Why did you go to the baseball camp instead of the Torah camp? Why did you, or whatever? Why did you? How come you became a mathematician? Why did you go into math? You never really told me how you chose it, or why you chose it, or if it just happened to you, or if you'd always wanted to be a math teacher. I also, crazy thing, whatever can come into your mind. If you spent an hour sitting there with a blank piece of paper, a blank journal, you could come up with 50 or 100 questions of things you do not know about your husband, even you've been married 30, 40 years. Okay. There's all kinds of things like, how come you always, you seem to always, be so punctual. How did you get that way? I find such a hard time to be punctual. How did you get that? Whatever you think of it, the man better than anyone on the planet Earth. Okay. And think of 150, 100 questions. And then when you're with him, before you sit down, before you're going out, before he comes home from dinner, before you're going on a walk, whatever you guys do together, you're driving on a car to go do an errand together, before you go on it, look through and pick 2 or 3, or write them down, in a place you can find them, without him seeing it. And even if he saw, say, if he sees that journal, just say, I realize that you're my number one priority in my life, and there are things I wanted to know more about you. You can even say, I was in a class and I was taught that, the more your husband shares himself with you, the closer you can be. And so I thought I'd give it a try. Whatever it is, it's not such a big deal why you're doing it. He will feel hopefully loved and cared for, that you want to be closer to him and connect more with him. So that is the start to get juices flowing of how to get your husband to talk more. Okay, go ahead. What else?
Okay, so Dina asks, my husband gets frustrated when I ask him too many questions. He says it sounds like he's in an interview. How do I make sure not to sound like an interviewer when we communicate? I happen to naturally love asking questions.
So tell him this is the pie that Hashem gave him. I hope it's a strawberry shortcake, and it's got whipped cream and lots of strawberries, and that's just what he was delivered. And for him to be annoyed about you caring about him strikes you as funny and odd. That you really try and sell him on the idea. Say I even if you feel like you're on an interview, it's my way of feeling like I'm connecting with you. And would you rather me not care? So I would sell them on the idea. And I would also maybe change your style a little bit. It could be that you say something to him like, why did you like that kind of books when you were growing up? and he answers, and then you say, well, why did this and why that? Well, so maybe that is tiring him out. Whereas if you said, why did you choose that? But, oh, that's interesting. I was thinking about this. What do you think of that? Maybe it's the way you word the questions, or, try again, it's a trial and error thing. But the most important answer to this question is to have him understand that your motivation is to get closer to him. Then whatever you kind of do, he might roll his eyes, he might this and that, but your motivation is so beautiful that hopefully, Meretz Hashem, with God's help, he will appreciate that. Good questions. Go.
Okay, great. Yocheved asks, how can I set the tone for a deeper, more intimate conversation? What words can I use to instigate this type of communication? I want my husband and I to open up to each other more, but getting started is challenging.
So the first thing not to do is to tell him, I want to have a deep conversation with you. And like,
run.
So that's the first thing. But it's a good question. I have a lot of students who go and then they want to have these deep conversations with their husband, and they end up having the deep conversation, and then they end up just like ragging on him or dissing him or putting him down or making him feel bad or criticizing him or whatever. So it does not go well. And then they wonder like why he's AWOL, and that's absent without leave. He's missing MIA, missing in action. Why he's missing in action when he's got when she wants to have these conversations with him. So you have to look back at your past. What kind of things might you have done that made it more, less enticing, let's say, or horrible? What have you done in the past that might have made it less conducive to having those kind of conversations? That's the first thing. And then the second thing is to have if you try and bite off everything and chew, it's like you take an apple and you can't even hardly swallow. Whereas if you just take a little knife and you cut a little piece and bite that, and that's the best way to do anything in life. We know this from Rav Yerucham, who talks a lot about taking step by step and bit by bit. So if you want to have these deeper conversations with your husband, start with something very a little bit lighter, you can talk about your childhood, or about how, you feel that very vulnerable at times. You start with something small, have a little conversation about it, make sure not to criticize or put down or make him feel bad in any way, make it a pleasant conversation. When he gives a comment, don't say, oh yeah, I tried that before. Oh, I did that before. Oh no, yeah, that somebody else said that, no. If you say, sometimes when I'm speaking with my girlfriends, a lot of times if you broach an intimate topic, but it's about somebody else, not about your relationship, it's not like, let's have a fight, but you say, when I'm talking with my girlfriend, I feel like she monopolizes the whole conversation. What do you think I should do? And then he said, well, let her know that. And then you say, I did. And then he gives another thing and he says, oh, I tried that. He gives another suggestion. Oh, yeah. Okay. No. When you say, what do I do about that? And he says, you should have a conversation with her. You've tried it 10 times. You say, oh, that's a great idea. What do you suggest I say to her? So not only are you validating him and appreciating him and recognizing that he is the source of all bracha in your life, but you're egging him on. He is going to say something novel and exciting. You know why? Because God will give it to him. When you are receiving advice and guidance from your husband, God will give him more. We know this from our sources. This is not Leah Richheimer's great idea, okay? This is the way the Masorah works. This is the way Hashem created. Not the Masorah works, the way the Bria works, the way nature works, the way our husbands work. So am I saying that you should be manipulative and lie and say, oh, that's a great idea when you've tried it 10 times? Actually, yes. But I'm just saying, that you don't have to say that's a great new idea I never heard before, but you can say, oh, that's interesting, or, that's an interesting idea. It is. Okay. And then ask probing questions so he'll share more with you. And the more he starts sharing with you about other issues, and the more he starts, that's the way to begin the connection. It's a beautiful question. I wish you hatzlacha, and I just have a guarantee for you that when you make these efforts in this exact way that I just mentioned, you will have hatzlacha. You may not see it directly. It may not be like flashing lights, like, oh, wow, what a difference, but the Masorah we have from Hashem is that when we make the efforts in Shalom Bayis and try to get closer, Hashem will help us in every way possible, because Shalom is the most important midah, the most important thing to Hashem. We have many sources for that. Okay. Woo. Okay. What else?
Beautiful. And I'm in all those brachos. Okay. So Goldie asks, I try to be so good with eye contact, but he doesn't really reciprocate and is always busy looking anywhere but me. How can I get him to look at me?
Wow. So it could be, I don't know the situation. I'd have too many questions. He could be on the spectrum. He could, with Asperger's, or he could have something that makes that uncomfortable for him, literally physically uncomfortable. So he might totally be there for you and attached to you and close to you, but just lacks that ability. And that, okay, that's what God gave you. Okay. Do you wish he gave you something different? Yes, but maybe he'd give you that, and then he would take away your, God forbid, your house, or he would, you wouldn't be able to walk properly. Who knows? We don't know. We don't understand why God gave us what he did, but this is what God gave you. So it could be that, or it could be he was never trained to look in the eye, or it could be that, maybe a parent looked him in the eye and gave him the evil face, mean faces and whatever. And so now he just doesn't want to, connect or whatever. So it could be something you could potentially work on. You have to pick your battles. If this makes you just heartsick and you just lose sleep over it, and it just is so torturous because you feel like you can't really connect if he's not looking in your eye, and it's one of the top 3 or 5 things that you want to work on at this moment. Okay, I hear. And then you can sit down with him and you can say, there's a kind of a funny issue. It may not be solvable, and be okay with that. I think he'll be able to tell in your voice whether you're making this up or whether it's true. But I might be able to be okay with it. It's a little hard for me, but I do find I look you right in the eye when we talk, and then sometimes when I'm talking to you, you're looking here and there, and it makes me feel not heard. It might be in my own mind. I'm willing to own up to that. Is this something you're even open to working on or thinking about or talking about or trying to, figure out how we can make this better? I know you want to make me happy, and I know that that's obviously must be hard for you because you don't do it naturally. And maybe it's because of your childhood, you're triggered from something that happened or trauma or drama that you went through. I don't know. I just wanted to bring up the topic to see, if there's anything possible that could be done. You hear it very, soft way in, kindly way, understanding way, but it's a way to bridge that gap so that you can connect and maybe improve things and maybe not. And you just have to be ready for both consequences. Very, very good. Okay. What else you got for me, Gila?
Okay, Panina's question is, I often get judgmental and or anxious when my husband shares things with me. How can I silence my own thoughts when we're talking so I can listen to him better? I like the self-awareness here.
Yeah, really good call. So I would think a little bit about, do some self-introspection. Is there any other kind? Introspection, right? You can't do other introspection, outrospection. But anyway, okay. So I would just really look at that, analyze what makes you anxious. Is it that he's complaining about money and that stresses you out? Is it that you don't like the way he talks about it? Is it, what pinpoint for yourself what it is that he's doing that is causing your anxiety, and then do some introspection, whether that predates your husband or doesn't. In other words, if your childhood, when you were talking to a parent, they were always harsh with you, and they might talk to you, and then there was always a sting, you never do anything right, or there's always a comment or verbal abuse or something. Let's say you grew up with these kinds of triggers, so then your anxiety with your husband really has to do with your history and not with your husband. Many problems we have, or interpersonal relationship things we have, predate our husbands. if that's the case, you need to own that. You need to even probably share that with them and say, when I was a kid, I was always attacked. No matter what I did, I was kind of the scapegoat of the family, and I was the youngest, or I was the oldest, or whatever, and I had a real hard time with it. So now, when you do something that, start talking about some issues, it makes me anxious, having nothing to do with you. What do you think we can do about that? Maybe if I just acknowledge it at the time, like, I'm feeling anxious right now, will that help you? Like that. So you're basically doing the introspection to find that out. And then if you realize, no, it's him, he's bringing up topics, before I go to bed, you like had this crazy, crazy day. And he says, I got the credit card bill. What are you thinking? Suddenly you're awake and you're like miserable, so if that's the case, you can have a conversation with him about, is it possible that, like, when I say, hey, I'm heading to bed, that any stressful topic you keep till later. So all of these questions that have been coming up in this whole show are all about, communication, all about, having an understanding between each other of what's going on in your brain, and sharing that is what is sort of this key and the source, if it's not done with blame, but is the key and the source to having a communication rapport that doesn't do damage, that builds rather than tears down. So again, these are at home tips that I'm giving. They're all, it's you do it through trial and error, and then you come to a place where this worked better than this. Let's double down on this, and you try that. And again, you're doing a running dialogue with you and your husband to sort of figure out what's the best way for us to communicate it with each other that doesn't cause pain or hurt or triggers from the past. Very, very, very good. Okay.
Okay, we have time for one more question from Malky. My heart goes out to her. My husband often gets down and prefers not to talk to anyone. My children wonder what they've done wrong. How can I explain it to them without putting him down?
That's very good. That would be a question for your husband. To say, I know you get down, you get moody or whatever. I get it. I'm not mad at you. I love you, and I love you whether you're in a good mood or a bad mood. I love you better when you're in a good mood. No, joking. Whatever. You can joke like this, by the way, with your husband, and say, but, sometimes when you get down, I'm not sure how the kids, react to it. And I don't want it to cause, I think you should have space in the home and ability to sort of, not let it affect your love of, with your relationship with the kids. I think you need to have the space to have a down mood, but we need to figure out how to keep that closeness nonetheless. So, for instance, Rav Salanter will say that, whether the routine is the foundation that keeps the home together. So, for instance, if a woman is really mad at her husband, she doesn't stop making dinner for him, if she's making dinner for him. If the man is mad at the wife, he's mad at her, he doesn't not take the garbage out. You do the routine, you do the actions that show the love and support and routine and stability in that home. And the same thing here. If he's in a bad mood, but he's still doing all the actions that are incumbent upon him to show that he's part of the team, you're fine. If he gets in a bad mood and then he just drops out, that needs probably therapeutic help, mental, I think maybe even medication, something to help him to be able to cope with whatever burdens he's carrying from childhood or from issues, or he doesn't feel like his parnas is good enough, or he has low self-esteem, many issues. And some of them can be helped with therapy. And with you got to find the right therapist. And sometimes you have to try several before you get one. But the bottom line is that if he is able to still maintain his responsibilities in the home, regardless of where his mood is going, that's just the cards that Hashem handed you, and the more communicative you have about it, and the more he might have ideas. Like, when I'm in a bad mood, maybe it's best the kids have play dates that day. Have them come up with ideas and brainstorm together, but have it as our problem and not like, you shouldn't be that way. You shouldn't be moody. This is the way you are. How are we going to cope with it? Excellent questions today, ladies. You're unbelievable. We are in the middle of chapter 9, doing communication. Stay tuned for next time. We are going to continue and give more strength in your mastery over communication. Here's your homework for today. One time this week, remove your phone when you're talking to your husband. Leave it behind. Like you're about to go into the other room talking to your husband. Turn the airplane mode on, off, on, whatever. Turn it so you can't hear a ring. Leave it in the room and go be with your husband. Okay, that's your homework. Just try it one time this week, ladies. You will see there's a closeness available in doing that is available in no other way. Hatzlacha. If you want more, we have so much more. If you want to learn our Masorah and have an awesome marriage, the first thing we have is a coaching program. If you are awesome with people and you want to know the Masorah better than 99% of the people on the planet Earth, like for reals, okay? It's a 4-month program. It's very intense. We have major scholarships and we have somebody who's granted in a lot to pay for a big bulk of it. It's still a little expensive, but for what you get, and then you can start charging money to know it. That's the coaching program. Don't miss it. Go to www.ladiestalkshow.com. We do retreats. We do all kinds of stuff. You'll find it there. www.ladiestalkshow.com. Thanks for being with us. Leah Richheimer for the Ladies Talk Show.